Hello, welcome to today's The Word in a Flash. I'm Dr. Freddie B. Wilson. Today I'm coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. Today's subject is the rewards of obedience to God. Being obedient to God's word will come with much reward. Elijah was fed by being obedient. God told him something to do, and he did it, even though he probably did not understand why God told him to go where God instructed him. We must do the same in our lives. God speaks to us, and we must be quiet enough to hear him. Hebrews 1 1 through 2 says, Long ago, God spoke many times and in many ways to our ancestors through the prophets. And now, in these final days, he has spoken to us through his Son. God promised everything to the Son as an inheritance, and going through the Son, he created the universe. A recent example in my life of being blessed by obedience was a situation I found myself in vehicle loans. Sometime around 2011, I was against. I had co-signed for a car, and eventually it went bad. I had to go ahead and try to trade it in, but unfortunately, I had another new vehicle that I had just bought myself, and I realized having these two payments was just too much. I was a little upside down in the one car, and it was on a high interest rate, so I had a hard time trying to get it traded in. I went to 6 different car dealerships trying to make a deal so I can get out of this two payments and make it down to one. The balance owed on one car had gone to $18,000 over $19,000. It was just going up in interest. The first blessing was that I worked with the finance company and agreed to make me by making makeup payments on that vehicle, and I paid the regular payments, and they would report them as being on time. I still look for some opportunity to trade in this additional car. I was repeatedly turned down for loans due to my low credit score at the time, and I was upside down with the vehicle, as I mentioned. I even tried to trade the car in to make it simpler to get a cheaper one, but still I would have 2 car payments. Eventually, I kept going around, couldn't figure out why I couldn't get this thing done. I said, Lord, I really need you to help me. I had dealt with a Lexus dealership, and they finally able to say that they could get me approved and less than the interest rate I was doing before. And I was really blessed. It was a little higher than that high interest rate. I mean, it was a little higher than I wanted, but it's much lower than the high interest rate on the other car. And God blessed me to be able to trade both cars in for a brand new car that helped me out tremendously. Um, it's just that I knew something was going to happen with this other car, and I was getting too closer to to the agreed to payments on the other car before I trade in. Lord told me to go back to that dealership at Lexus that I was working with, and they told me they could work it out, and that was truly a blessing. And this is especially important to note that I had already been turned down by this dealership as far as the deal I was trying to make, but I went back and they made me a better deal than even before. So if I listened to myself, I would never go on back. But I lived through before doing something God told me to do, and He really made a difference. So I can attest to that. Even though things look bleak, God can bless you no matter how things look, no matter what you've been told before. And as they always say, whose story will you believe? Some listening to this may look only as the debt I incurred in doing this, but not realizing that this sort of blessing goes beyond common understanding of finances. When you do what God will have you to do, you cannot fail. You might have to go through some things along the way, and you may not understand what's going on. First Kings 17, 1 through 7 gave us an example of God's will, how God will reward you by doing what He tells you to do. And it's like when God told Elijah to go down and warn the king that there was going to be a drought. And no one wanted to listen, but they tried to prepare themselves. And the drought occurred just as God had warned. Sometimes God will push us out of our comfort zone in order to bless us. Elijah was out of his comfort zone by having to warn the king about something he really didn't know was going to happen. Then God blessed Elijah regardless of what was going on and with the drought. Sometimes we choose to remain where you are or with the wrong person because this is what we're used to. This could be out of fear or just plain stubbornness. Occasionally we get confused as to which way the Lord is leading us. We must remain in prayer, and God will lead us to victory no matter what we're dealing with. 2 Corinthians 2, 9 through 10 says, I wrote to you as I did to test you and to see if he would fully comply with my instructions. When you forgive this man, I forgive him too. And when I forgive whatever needs to be forgiven, I do so with Christ's authority for your benefit. In order to have obedience, there must be order. God establishes expectations or orders of this world as well as in the family. I mentioned before how the head of the family must treat the people in the family, and I showed how the children need respect the leadership of the family. The father is supposed to get his children well acquainted with biblical law, respect for authority, and being a mentor. Sometimes, as we know nowadays, there's no father around, and women have to do that. So that mother have to do the job of being a spiritual lead in that family. No matter which parent's taking responsibility for the family, Exodus 20:12 showed us that Moses enforced duty and obedience to both parents. During those times, any outrage against parents was a capital offense. The Bible spoke of advantages and benefits of obeying parents. Ephesians 6:1-3 said, "Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you will have a long life on earth." In all this, God still established boundaries on parents. God expects children to obey their parents, but he did not want parents to take unfair advantage of this privilege by allowing abuse to come in. Corinthians 3:20-21 says, "Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged." So this is why I was saying that parents need to take responsibility, not just abuse the fact that everyone have to go by what they say. You need to do this out of love and understanding. The moral teaching of Christianity had a significant bearing on the relationship between master and servants at the time. This relationship can be transferred to dating relationship between the employer and employee, and between relationship between the average person to one in authority. God expects obedience, reverence, and gratefulness. God can bless the servant to become one over the person who was once master or the person once in charge. You do not have to always view the person as an authority, as the enemy, but God said he would make your enemy a footstool. This does not always mean that the person who was once the servant will become the master, although it could happen. It can also mean that God will use that person's authority to become a blessing to that subordinate, whether the person or leader wants to do it or not. They may be doing things they don't even know why they're doing it for you. So count on that, and God will bless you. Deuteronomy 6:17-19 says, "You must diligently obey the commands of the Lord your God, all the ways and the laws and decrees he has given you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so all you will go well with you. Then you will enter and occupy the good land, and the Lord swore to give your ancestors. You will drive out all the enemies living in the land, just as the Lord would say it to you. He would. You must be willing to pray for others when you know they need it, okay? Job 42:10 says, Job prayed for his friends. The Lord restored his fortune. In fact, the Lord gave him twice as much as before. Keep in mind, Job prayed for his friend, but yet he got blessings. So you have to be an intercessor for others in need of blessings. And they gave many examples of that in the Bible. And Job was an intercessor, and he blessed Job as Job was trying to get other people blessed. Going back to the example Elijah provided of God's blessing for being obedient, Elijah fully submitted himself to God's will. His faith in God had no limit. He displayed full faith and courage even in times of trouble and danger, no matter what was present or who was present. His obedience was unquestioned as that of a child. Elijah did not seek credit or public faith for his faith and trust in God. People of faith must show restraint and involve self-denial for the sake of obedience. Matthew 16:26 says, "For what will a man be profited if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul?" Now, everyone's going to understand a faithful person who is willing to follow God's will for his or her lives. Some may think the person is crazy for stepping out and doing what God told them to do. You must be obedient to God no matter how impossible the task may seem. You will get your reward for obedience. I encourage you to just get in God's word and get an understanding of what God have you to do. Make sure you know that God is speaking to you, and that comes through the relationship with Him. Be blessed and share these messages with others. Thank you.